Good afternoon and welcome to our 10 years, 10 minutes live interview. Today we are very happy to host Alain Kinsch, very successful and hardworking achiever, multitasker and also member of the association. As usual, you can use the Q&A button and the chat function in order to ask him many questions. First of all, welcome Alain.
Hey, welcome Stefan. Thanks for having me.
Great. So let's then directly start. The idea was not to introduce you during long minutes. It's simply you will be the thin red line of this interview. And let's go then back a few years ago when you co-founded the LPEA, 10 years now, and with other charter members. What was the initial idea of that, and how did the private equity venture capital landscape look at that time?
Well, let me first say hello to everybody here in this call. Thanks for joining in. And I must say, the reality here is that this idea didn't come in 2009. I mean, I had the luck that when I started working in '95, one of my first jobs at that time at Arthur Andersen was to work for a private equity fund, one of the only 23 funds which existed in Luxembourg. And you know what? I literally fell in love with that asset class. And you know what really struck me was this alignment between the interests of the investors, the managers, and that's really something which I like as a model. And I thought this is really a great industry working on the value creation. So that's really where this was coming from. So I need to go 2 steps back, which is basically that we found out that Luxembourg at the time was mainly a way to connect the dot between the investors and the operating companies who structuring cross-border acquisitions. But what we didn't have, except for these 23 funds, was funds. So we started looking into creating a private equity fund, which was, as you maybe remember, in 2004, the SICR. So that was the first project where I, as an individual, was associated with a couple of other people who came up with that idea and started writing that law, basically. Then we found out that the SICR is not flexible enough and that basically other asset classes were also screaming for a new vehicle. So we came with the SIF in 2007. And LPEA, we started, you know, the thinking process about it in 2007, 2008, because more and more private equity actors were interested to use Luxembourg, but there was no association. And a few people like Jules Desemont and myself and others, we were very active at the time in the European Venture Capital and PE Association in West Europe. And they always said, like, why do you guys have nothing in Luxembourg? And so it was taking that all together that in 2009, we were a bunch of people, of course, with Hans-Jürgen Schmitz, with other people like at the time also Mark Faber and Gihalis, and Emmanuel Abrero. We said we really want to have an association which is focused on the GPs, because we have Alfie, and Alfie is great, but Alfie was not at the time focused on private equity and especially the GPs. And this is where the idea came from, and it was great fun to create it. Although in the beginning, a lot of people, especially in public stakeholders, were kind of saying, "Well, what is this? PE? We heard about venture capital, but it was kind of new when we created it." And then the story went on. I mean, the story went on, as you know, and LPEA has been great to basically work on the awareness of what private equity and venture capital is. LPEA has been so great in launching all these technical working groups, which is really impressive when you're looking what has been coming out of that. And then, of course, LPEA has also been instrumental for all the changes in our toolbox which came afterwards, like the Luxembourg Limited Partnership, like the RIFE, etc.
On our side, we really like that as a value, the entrepreneurial one and agility. What would be the thing you're most proud of concerning the LPEA?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of things to be proud of, honestly, but I think the rapid, the rapid legitimacy which this association has achieved, because 10 years is really small. It's a small period of time. And, nowadays everybody knows what LPEA is, and LPEA is doing a contribution which is complementary to what other associations are doing. And the fact, actually, quite frankly, from a public perspective, how many governments in Europe and how many regulators are very knowledgeable about private equity? I'm sure that in our government and at our regulator, most of them, they know very well what private equity is about, and private equity is seen as a positive contributor to the economy, as a job creator. And so this is why we have policies and regulation which embraces private equity positively. And I think this is not only the achievement of LPEA, but LPEA has been probably the most vocal contributor to that achievement.
Congratulations again for that great role, and let's continue the development of the LPEA and also the development of our members' visibility, promotion, and also defend it when necessary. Between 2009 and 2020, Alain, you were also country managing partner and market segment leader, private equity, of EY Luxembourg, and you proactively participated to shape our landscape. What would be the most memorable moments during this great journey?
I mean, I would say probably, I remember very well, for example, visiting a company in mainland China about 15 years ago, producing glasses and selling them as white label products to all the big companies which you're knowing, and where you buy your pair of glasses at 250 euro in Auchan, and then you see that the company is basically selling it for €1 and makes 100% profit margin, so produces it for 50 cents. No, I mean, to private equity, it's probably one of the asset classes where you see so many different companies. So there's this company in China, I saw bike producers in Slovenia, I saw banks in Poland, I saw mine producers in Africa. So you get, over a long career, I would say, you get to see such a huge number of companies from different industries, and you find out that at the end of the day, it's not nuclear science. It's about having a good management team. It's about having a strategy, yeah, but having especially good execution, having good cost management, and having a healthy degree of innovation. And so basically, this is what basically I learned in that journey. Now, specifically as regards EY, when I started the private equity practice, basically we were 3 people in the private equity practice at the time. And nowadays, so basically, as you probably know, my successor here as managing partner, Olivier, he took over from me as the private equity leader of EY when I became managing partner 11 years ago. And so basically, if you look at the private equity practice of EY, so I did the first 10 years, and then Olivier did the next 10 years. And basically, it's now 400 people, and it's 42% of our revenues. So it's absolutely huge. There is not one Big Four in Luxembourg, for sure not, but even not worldwide, where the percentage of the entire turnover of private equity and, I must say, of real estate is 42% of our revenue. So it really has become an enormous powerhouse. And that's something I'm very proud of. And, you know, it's a virtuous circle, because I don't know how it was about you, or, you know, for those of you on the call, you know, when you start working, when you're young for a company, you know, you want to start to work for the best company. And the best is not necessarily the logo, but what that company is best at. And so nowadays in private equity in Luxembourg, you know, people who want to work for a service company, you know, they really, EY is really their top address. And so it's kind of a virtual circle in terms of attracting talent, and that's something. Now I make a little bit of publicity here for EY, but you know, I think it's just natural that if a practice is performing pretty well, then you know you can attract also the right people, and that again makes you the best team to service clients, etc. So it has been quite a fantastic experience. I had the great privilege that EY had nominated me also the head of private equity funds for Europe, for Middle East, India, and Africa. So I did this for about 12 years. So which means that I had the chance to see a bit what's going on outside of Luxembourg, and also make Luxembourg shine, I would say, in the EY organization, which is why today within the organization, Luxembourg is kind of a center of expertise for the entire network, actually.
The 10 years seem to be a symbolic and important number for all of us.
Yes.
If we link the private equity industry with Luxembourg, which general trends or more recent ones have you witnessed?
I think that overall, I think the biggest change has, of course, been that we are on the map of private equity when it comes to the funds, which we haven't been around 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. So nowadays, when you structure a fund, there's no way around Luxembourg. You may decide not to do it in Luxembourg, but you must analyze Luxembourg. So it's part of the process when you take a decision. So I think Luxembourg is really mainstream on the card of private equity. That's one thing. And the second thing, which of course everybody knows probably here on the call, is that we have been moving up the value chain because we have been able not only to do the structuring, but we have more and more of the compliance, audit, tax, and what have you, middle office functions here in Luxembourg. So this is all good, but I think we cannot stop there. The train must move up, and what comes up next is not necessarily, when I say we need to attract the front office, people always tell me, oh, you know, forget that, deal teams will not come to Luxembourg. But I'm not talking about the deal teams. I'm talking about deal execution, which is really where you have the data center, the data room, sorry, where you do the due diligence, operational due diligence, etc. And that can be here in Luxembourg more and more. The other one is clearly the fundraising. So everything around marketing, investor relation teams, which today might be in London, I think there's a real opportunity to attract them over here to Luxembourg. And then maybe one day the deal teams to a certain extent might spend more time in Luxembourg too, but I would not see that as a #1 priority. So I think we should continue to go step by step. So I personally am really very positive on private equity here in Luxembourg. Of course, there are challenges. I mean, that's clear. Talent is clearly, I think, probably one of the biggest challenges is to attract and to retain the right talent. And you cannot say to somebody in London, hey, come over to Luxembourg. It's 100 times smaller than London. There is no sea, there are no mountains. There are less places to do party in the evenings. The rents are the same and the taxes are higher. I mean, that of course doesn't work. So you need to have some advantages to sell. And of course, we know our advantages, which are that we are very well located, we are secure, we have more and more culture offer, and it's great for families and English-speaking school and blah, blah, blah. But this is not sufficient. So we need to be really tax competitive. I'm a big believer in that. That doesn't mean the race versus the bottom, but I mean, let's be honest, people who come to Luxembourg, they don't want to pay more taxes in most cases than where they come from. So that is an important one. And yes, I think rents are a problem, especially for young people. That's a real problem. So I'm not telling you anything new, but I think these are the roadblocks I see. But these are house-made problems. I mean, this is not something exogene, as you say in French. It's something which is house-made. So I think it's also house-solvable if we are smart enough to attack the problem.
Sounds like a plan to attract those talents and front office persons. So let's make this happen. From an EY perspective, any disruptive developments worth mentioning quickly?
Yeah, I think that when we talk about disruption, I mean, disruption is going on all the time. And I think the way I look at this is nothing is disruptive. If you look at over 100 years, nothing is really disruptive. I mean, disruptive is really when you look over 1 or 2 years, yes, because there is change and sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's slower. Now everybody's very excited about digital and, you know, robotics and blockchain, etc. And of course, this is disruptive. But, you know, there have been much more disruptive changes in the past 200 years. So I think that it's just a question of embracing the changes and trying to be a little bit quicker than others and more innovative than others in the way we implement this. And we know that our industry, private equity, to a certain extent, people make sometimes fun of us that we are still too much Excel-based and that we are not so digital than others. So I think there is a potential to improve everything around data mining, making comparisons between sales force effectiveness of portfolio companies and all these kind of things. So there's a lot which which can be done. But I don't see that as a threat. I see that as an opportunity. What I would see more as a threat is geopolitics. I think that whoever wins the US elections, you want it to go smoothly. You don't want to see a big conflict between certain superpowers in the world. I think I would be more concerned about some geopolitical disruption than by some technological or business disruption, which I think for PE and for Luxembourg is manageable.
So as a summary, you co-founded the LPEA, you were country managing partner at EY Luxembourg, and you're now member of the HCPF, or Comité de la Place Financière, and chairman of the AIF Group, member of the CSSF Investment Funds Committee, and also member of the State Council. Quick question, Alain, when do you sleep?
At night, I hope. I'm not a good sleeper, unfortunately, contrary to others. So I cannot sleep if it's not dark and everything is closed and it's quiet. That's one of my problems, by the way. So my sleep is not super. No, when do I sleep? I think the fact that I will leave EY on January 1 is part of the fact that I have been so happy to do what I have been able to do in my life so far. I'm now 49. I will be 50. I have been working, really a lot with the turbo on for the last 25 years, and especially the last 11 as managing partner. And I said to myself, do you want to do this until the end and maybe die of a heart attack in 3 years? Or do you maybe want to, at some point, to slow down a bit? And that's what I try to do starting January 1. So I will keep my mandate as on a state council, obviously, which I like very much to do. As you mentioned, I had to contribute. I try to contribute to a couple of committees that I will also continue to do, and I'm surely going to do also some other stuff. But clearly, there is a personal objective of reducing the amount of hours where I work per week.
Fantastic. Concerning all those different mandates we mentioned before, what can you tell us about those activities? What are the hottest projects of the moment?
I think the Haut Comité is clearly one. I think I'm a big fan of the Haut Comité since it was created by Luc Frieden and then managed by Pierre Gramegna. It's a real, sometimes we don't realize what chance we have in Luxembourg, that the minister himself gets all these people around the table, and it's a real breeding ground. It's a laboratory for innovation. And I'm happy that I can lead the AIF group. So what we did is we interviewed 50 private equity houses and real estate houses worldwide. And so we came up with around 25 recommendations, which I presented to the Haut Comité in July. And we are now in the midst of starting to implement this. And that has always been a big strength of Luxembourg, which is this working hand in hand between the government and the business community. At the end, it's the government who decides, but we can make a big contribution. And I think I always find this very exciting. The same is to a different extent true for the CSSF. The CSSF is our regulator, so it's a different perspective. But again, it's the same. It's the fact that the CSSF consults so strongly with the industry before launching new circulars. I think it's just, as Claude Marx always says, it's a way of basically not being in the glass house, but deciding once the industry has been consulted. And then I think we should take the opportunity to contribute to that. And you mentioned the State Council. I think the State Council for me, it is kind of a fantastic learning experience. Actually, that is what it was. When you come from the business world and you work in a state institution, that's always it's kind of an eye-opener in the beginning. You have 21 members and 2/3 are doctors in law. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a jurist, so I try to bring the business angle to it. But it's also quite an exciting experience.
You also mentioned the geopolitical threats. Any great clouds we should seriously focus our efforts on?
Well, I would say, I guess I read the news like yourself, Stefania, probably everybody here today. And I think all the eyes are now on the US. Yeah, I would say You know, whoever wins, we just hope that, you know, we move on in a good way. But I think that in terms of, you know, geopolitics, I think the one which is probably the one which concerns every human being right now is COVID. It's not geopolitics, but it's one of these big threats and issues which we have on the table. I think COVID, you know, we will get over that. I think that probably there will be a vaccine by probably the end of next year. Some people say earlier. I'm not too much a big believer in it, but I think people, you know, they learn to handle the virus. If I look here at the Y, you know, we have 50% of our people in the office now every day. People need to learn to live with this and to take the right security measures. I think for Luxembourg, it is very important that we understand that we are a service hub. A service hub means selling, relationships, and that means meeting. I mean, we will all do more remote working. There will all be more remote, all fine. But remote is not the answer to everything. It's absolutely not replacing human interaction. Look at, you know, why in the US, why are all the startups in Silicon Valley? If, you know, it could be done all remotely, there would be some in Michigan, some in Florida, some here, some there. Why do they all regroup? Because you need to have an ecosystem, because people need to communicate, to speak to each other. And that is more true for a country like Luxembourg, where we need to sell ourselves to the world and to other people all the time and build relationships. And therefore, I think we are, from that perspective at least, more exposed than any of our big neighbors. It's so crucial we have the substance in Luxembourg, because otherwise one could come to the idea, well, if you all can work from Arlon, Thionville, and Trier, but maybe I don't need you at all in Luxembourg, and we can do this from Frankfurt or Brussels or Paris. So I think that, you know, one needs to look at this not in a naive way, but try to see what is the next and the third and the fourth and the fifth step behind that. And therefore, I'm not always very happy when I hear people saying that they believe they can only work from home, because I do not believe that at all, and even less if you work in a creative job where you need to be creative while you need to meet people. Well, so I think that that we should keep in mind and not fall in the all remote trap. And then I think we will master COVID with or without a vaccine.
Excellent transition to look now into the future. I don't know if you're able to create an own crystal ball with all that knowledge and these great experiences, but how would you see the next years in Luxembourg and globally?
I think from an economic perspective, we all know that the next 2 years will not be fun because all the states, they will miss revenues. And we know what states do when they miss revenues. They go and look for more money, or they cut budgets. Depending if you are left or right wing, I'll let you make the choice. But it's going to be the one or the other, because it cannot be indefinitely increase of debt. I think Luxembourg, we can still do it now, but it will not be forever. So I think from that perspective, you know, I think it will be a more difficult period. But the way I look at it is there's always opportunities. You know, in each situation, if there is a crisis, the cards are newly mixed. And then either you will be part of the losers or you will be part of the winners. And I think as Luxembourg, we should, I mean, I know it's more easy to say than to do, but whether it is as a company or as a country, try to look at it positively and see what new opportunity this creates. But also, I think, speak true to our people in the company and people in the country. I think it's clear that there will be some hardship to a certain extent. And voila, we need to deal with it. Overall, I think that if we continue doing business the way we did, that means to be smart, to be quick. Unfortunately, we saw some good examples with Faye and how not to do it. So let's take this as a fantastic example, how not to do it, and do it differently next time, which is that we need to be quick and basically show that in Luxembourg, we nurture the pragmatism, which has always been one of our strengths. And I think if we do that, I am absolutely, as we say in Luxembourgish, as man het bang for Luxembourg. That means I'm not afraid. about the future if we don't forget this, and that in Luxembourg we understand that we live already at a very high level, and sometimes what we complain, but it's luxury complaints. I think sometimes we need to put our feet back on the ground and look where we were coming from. We were all peasants at the end of the 19th century. Let's not forget that. So it's only 100 years ago or 120 years ago. Let's not forget where we are coming from. And if we do that, then I think we will have the humility to manage the future.
Thanks for these insights and also this optimism. We like that. Any mega trends, imminent major changes you would foresee?
In terms of, well, I mean, in terms of the global mega trends, I think it depends very much on what will happen in the US. You know, so I think if Donald Trump wins, probably we'll see the same type of politics, which is maybe less globalization, more bilateral. And I think that I'm not one of these who complain about this all the time. I think then that we need to adapt according to where this is going. I think global trends is that you see that countries which have less democracy, we see more and more countries who are ruled by regimes which are less democratic, and some of them are quite successful actually. So I think that this is for us who are, like, I'm a liberal, I'm a full democratic liberal, as you may know. But you know, our democratic model in certain situations is not always the most efficient answer of the moment, and that might give different ideas to different people. And I think that you know, we will probably see some change in these models and the type of leaders which there will be in the world. And I think as companies, we need to play with this, and we cannot just say, well, we are like that and we use our global democratic model. We need to evolve in the environment which is there. And I think what I say is a bit theoretical, but I see this as a major change over the next years, that there is a higher number of regimes throughout the world who are governed according to different models than ours, and we should not have the arrogancy just to believe that our model is the one who fits everywhere.
Thanks, Alain, for your time, all these insightful elements. We have also received 2 questions via the chat function. So now is the time. If you have some burning questions on your lips, Alain is here for you. The first one would bring us back to the talent attraction, where somebody is asking from the audience, which profiles are we missing in Luxembourg?
I think we're always missing people who are hard workers, who have enthusiasm, who are engaged, and who want to move on. So for me, that's the first thing. We want to attract these type of people. Second, from a qualification perspective, clearly technology and digital. If I look at EY, we attract a lot of people from top universities, from Bangalore in India, from other universities around the world. So technology, I think, is a big one. And still everything around finance in it and compliance in its broadest sense. But technology, I would rate that as number 1 from a skill perspective. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's the profile. If you attract people, no matter what they do, if they come here and they want to go from A from B, they want to advance in their life, they want to do something great, that is the ones who bring Luxembourg forward. It's a win-win. When I recruited so far, I was always more interested about the fire burning in the person than the technicalities, because technicalities, we can make them learn about that. But the fire, if you don't have it, it's a bit difficult to lead it, you know, to make it go on.
Yeah, and Luxembourg's success also depends on the national talents and certainly also the international ones. So a great combination. But yes, the fire, that's the biggest motivation you need. The second question concerns the announcement of the stock options and whether the industry could promote attractive tools for decision makers, deal doers, and PE house partners. Yeah, I mean, on that one, I think must would be my answer. The industry must, because as I said before,
you don't attract people with higher taxes. And we have an average tax rate in Luxembourg for private people, all included, of 48.14%. That's really high. And in many countries, it's lower, the effective tax rate of what people are paying. With a stock option, it was possible to get that average tax rate, depending on how much you earn, down to 30, let's say 33, 34%, which is still a lot of taxes, but you know, it's okay and it's good to pay a lot of taxes, but you need to see where the cursor is. And I think, and I have always been very clear, that's my personal view, 48 is too high. So yeah, if we want to, and that's what I mentioned before, I think, okay, stock options have been abolished. That's a political decision. We all know the pressure was coming from everywhere. And I would say, unfortunately, that's what has been decided. So be it, but then there needs to be another means to remain competitive.
And a last but very quick one, what will happen after January 1st on your side, next to the mandates you will pursue?
Well, first, I will have a little bit more time for my friends, for my family. And I do a lot of sports and I do a lot of other things. So I'm just going to spend a little bit more time on that. And I will remain loyal to the industry for which my heart beats, which is private equity. And for the moment, I still have a bit the nose on the guidon, as we say at EY. So I leave myself still a little bit of time before I already fill up again the agenda before January 1.
Just received also a last one. Due to the COVID pandemic, what are the consequences for the PE industry right now?
Very clearly, I think the biggest consequence is, how do you want to make an acquisition? If you can't see the management team, how do you want to make a due diligence if you can't interact with the management team? And so the clear, I think, impact number one is it's an industry which, on number one, put always the team, and the team. And that requires interaction. And I think the inability to travel, the inability to sit together is a major obstacle in the number and the speed of the deals, both on the exit and on the acquisition side, which can be done. And then, of course, all the private equity funds which invested in the industries which are the most impacted, hospitality, for example. I mean, it's clear that in terms of portfolio performance, the impact for some will be huge.
Thank you, Alain, for your time and also for being present today. It was really a pleasure on our side, and for all that knowledge, those insights, and for being very transparent, sharing also your personal views. That was really great. And also, dear audience, thanks a lot for joining us. We hope to see you very soon again. And please see now a quick preview of our next events, which will be this week around the sustainability webinar, where we have LPEA ambassadors, including our co-chairs of our ESG club, also a person from EY there. And afterwards, we also have an HR webinar with Alain Kinsch, who will talk about the different jobs you can find within Big Fours. Thanks a lot and goodbye.
Bye-bye.